Hello everyone, I'm going to be making a DPS guide for the Arcane Mage. So, this is my talent build that I am currently using. Some of the talents I'm using, like Improved Blink, are not very useful. Those are just kind of a fun talent that I like to have, or Enchantress Absorption aren't the best for DPSing, but you can respec for stuff that could be more useful, like Prismatic Cloak to invisible quickly, or just take less damage from raid damage, or Burning Soul so you can cast easier. This is kind of my PvE and PvP spec, so yeah. So basically, you're going to have your three main spells, which is Arcane Blast, Arcane Missiles, and Arcane Barrage. You really don't use Arcane Barrage that much. It's not very useful. It's more of you're moving and you cast it on the move. But it can be used if your Arcane Blast stacks get too high and you need to clear your stacks because you're low on mana. So first of all, buffs is really just Arcane Brilliance. I happen to have the Dalaran Brilliance version, but it's exactly the same. And you're almost always going to want to have Mage armor up. I never use Molten Armor or Frost Armor. As far as Glyphs go, you're going to absolutely need Arcane Blast, because that's going to give you lots of extra damage. Glyph of Mage Armor is very useful, as you're going to get more mana. Arcane Missiles is not absolutely necessary. Arcane Barrage, I guess you could replace for Arcane Missiles, but neither are main DPS. You're pretty much spamming Arcane Blast. Major Glyphs is not really important. Arcane Power is a good glyph to be using, but like I said, this is kind of a combination of PvP and PvE. So for PvE, I do recommend taking Glyph of Arcane Power. I just don't happen to have it on. Now for actual, I didn't really go over some good talents you're going to need. Arcane Concentration is good for mana, so you're going to need that one. Netherwind Presence, just to cast faster. Improved Arcane Missiles, you could easily go without, but it does help your DPS, and so does Missile Barrage, so I would take those. Invocation, not that great, but for fights where you have to interrupt, it can give you some DPS, so that's a little optional. Torment the Weak is really good if you take Slow and Nether Vortex, just to get some extra damage. Presence of Mind, necessary, it's a great cooldown, and it unlocks this, which brings down your other cooldowns, which are both necessary. Arcane Tactics, although some say it's a waste of a point for just flat 3% DPS, you need it. If you're going to be doing AoE, take this. If not, obviously don't, because it's just for Arcane Explosion. Like I said earlier, Slow and Nether Vortex are only for Torment the Weak, PvP, and to unlock Arcane Power. Arcane Potency is very useful, because when you proc Arcane Concentration or Presence of Mind, you get extra crit, and crit does help with the mana thing for Master of Elements, which, by the way, you do want to take in the Fire Tree. Improved Mana Gem, yes, it's very useful for when you pop your Mana Gem. Focus Magic, yes, it helps other people crit and you crit, can help out your healers. Arcane Power, it's a useful cooldown. I only use it at main nuke phases because the mana cost, but other than that, it's good. And Piercing Ice, you're just 3% crit. Okay, so for your main rotation, there's really kind of three phases of an Arcane Mage. The first one is at the beginning of a fight when no one's popping cooldowns. This wouldn't apply to fights like Balrog or Major Domo where you pop cooldowns right away. But essentially, you're going to stay a good, steady mana pace, spamming Arcane Blast, and when you get a little bit low, then you're going to want to pop Arcane Missiles as soon as it procs. Now, like I said earlier, Arcane Barrage can help for clearing your stacks. So, let's say I'm doing this, I'm getting low, and Arcane Missiles just hasn't procced. You're just getting unlucky. And you'll see I'm getting close to about half mana, which can be very bad. So, in this scenario, I would cast Arcane Barrage. There's no real set point when you should hit Arcane Missile. Some people say as soon as it procs. Some people say after 3 arcane blasts, 4 arcane blasts. This paladin's being annoying, but it really depends on your gear, because your intellect is going to give you more mana, so that's going to affect it. Your crit's going to give you more mana back, so that's definitely going to be a procky factor. When I say it gives you mana back, I mean assuming you have the Master of Elements talent. So this phase is pretty basic. It's really just about watching your mana. I like to occasionally pop Presence of Mind, just to give me an extra bit of damage. Sometimes if I have a low cooldown trinket that has an on use, I will use it, not always. I don't like to use Arcane Power during this phase at all, just because it lowers your, or increases your mana cost, and it's going to cause you to, it's just not helpful, because you don't want to be too low on mana. Mirror Image, I find, just has too much of a large cooldown, and you're not going to be able to pop it again when you need it. Time Warp, obviously, it's not a 10-minute cooldown, it's a 5-minute cooldown, but it does have the debuff, so you can only have it every 10 minutes. And if you just pop it randomly, your raid will get mad at you. So the next phase is the Burn phase. This is essentially you're popping Time Warp or Heroism, or I guess Bloodlust if you're Horde. You're just going to pop all your cooldowns and spam as much as you can Arcane Blast, and just get as much burst, high DPS out of it. So normally you'd have Focus Magic, which would give you a little extra DPS. You'd have raid buffs like Replenishment. You'd have like Kings giving you stats, or Mark of the Wild, Might giving mana. So all that stuff kind of helping you out. But now I'm just going to quickly pop all my cooldowns, which I will explain in just a second, and see how much DPS I can do. So you're going to have Time Warp, unless a Shaman pops Bloodlust or Heroism. Mirror Image. Basically, it's going to help you deal more damage. It's not that amazing, but it does help. Presence of Mind is going to make your next spell instant. It's also, with the Arcane Potency, it's going to give your next 2 spells an increased crit chance. This one, Arcane Power, the one I only use during the burn phase, just because you're going to have so much burst damage, it's going to help a lot. Trinkets, if you have any on-use trinkets, this is just a macro I made with a different icon to pop your trinkets. I do sometimes pop Flame Orb, not always. If it's strictly single target, maybe not. If there's 1 or 2 others, sometimes I will. So now I'm just going to go ahead, pop all my cooldowns, and try and do as much burst as I can. So now I'm just spamming my 1 key. You don't need to have everything bound, but it's nice to have your Arcane Blast bound to your 1 key, so you can just spam it as much as you can. So you see I'm around 26, 29, 30k DPS, which, now this is obviously only going to be during your burn phase. You're not going to be able to sustain this. And I'm out of mana, well, virtually. So after your burn phase, when you pop as much cooldown as you can, and you're down to 0 mana, you're obviously going to have Arcane Missiles up with that many Arcane Blasts, just because that's free. And then you're going to want to evoke. Now, I did miss my mana gem on the burn phase, because I forgot to use that. I usually use that after a couple casts, but I was distracted and I forgot to. Now, I do this sometimes because I have it over here, and the rest of my cooldowns are over here. I should probably fix that, but I haven't yet, so you're going to want to use your mana gem, because that's also going to give your spell power with this cooldown. Use that after a couple Arcane Blasts, so you can obviously get the mana back. But mainly, that's it for the burn phase. And then the recharge phase was literally just Arcane Missiles, Arcane, or Mana Gem if you still have it, which if you did it right, unlike me, you shouldn't have it left, and Evocation. So that's mainly your rotation as an Arcane Mage. Not really that complex. Now for stat priority, the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to reach your hit cap. Past that, you're just going to want to get as much Intellect you can. After Intellect is Mastery. Mastery is really good. Speaking of which, I should probably reforge the hit off my cape into Mastery. Sorry, the Haste. Anyway, so then Mastery, because it's very good. Your Mastery is going to... It's going to give you extra damage, basically, for the more mana. So especially for your burn phase, if you start out with high mana, it's going to give you very good burst, and at the beginning of a fight, it's going to help you do more DPS. After Mastery, everyone says Crit and Haste are on par, but I definitely like Crit way better because of this talent that gives you your mana back. And if you think about it, the more Haste you have, the more spells you're casting, which means the more Arcane Blast you're casting, which means the more mana you're using. And with Crit, you have a chance to get more damage, and when you do, you get more mana back. So I definitely take Crit before Haste. For gemming, I like to mostly just stack Intellect. If there's a good socket bonus like Intellect, I'll take other stuff. I do need to gem some hit though. I may be over my hit cap right now because I've been getting a lot of gear with 4.3, but for the most part I'm gemming Intellect. You'll notice I have Spirit on this helm. It's because I had a really crappy helm before, and I reforged the Spirit off it, and if you are in a situation like this, reforge any Spirit off, and like this socket bonus is Spirit, just totally ignore that and put like 40 Intellect in or hit if you need it. For the most part, this is an Arcane Mage. If I'm forgetting something or did something incorrect, feel free to leave a comment calling me a noob or whatever. But thanks for watching.